Good Monday morning. Well, we come to a moment in Abraham's story that is honestly greater than the faith it took to believe in the promise of Isaac. And we find it in Genesis 22, and it starts with God. It says God tested Abraham and said to him, Abraham, and he said, "Here I am." I love it that Abraham is so familiar with the voice of God. Oh, that we would be so familiar with the voice of God that as soon as he calls, we know it's him. Here I am. He said, "I want you to take your son, your only son, Isaac." And I'm going to paraphrase here so I can keep this short. But God tells him, "I want you to go sacrifice your son, Isaac." And scripture says that early the next morning, he got up with Isaac and servants. And the interesting thing that is not recorded in this passage is that there is no debate recorded. Now, I don't know about you, but I do know me. And I do know that if I've waited 25 years on a promise, and my promise has finally arrived, and then all of a sudden God is asking me to get rid of this promise, so to speak, for lack of a better way of saying that, there's going to be some dialogue. You know, unfortunately, I'm not, I guess, quite as full of faith as Abraham is. Maybe there was dialogue, but there is none recorded. And we know the dialogue recorded just a few weeks ago when he is interceding for Sodom and Gomorrah. That there is dialogue there, but there is none recorded here. And so he takes him early the next morning, and they go. And as he tells his servants, "I want you to stop here, and Isaac and I are going to go up." And it says that Isaac looked at him and he said, "We have the wood, but where's the sacrifice?" And Abraham says these words. He says this. He said, "God will provide for himself the lamb for a burnt offering, my son." So they both went on. So both of them went on together. And so that is such a statement of faith. And I don't want to get ahead of myself. So they go up to the mountain, and Abraham takes his son and places him on an altar. And scripture says that he actually took the knife, he reached out, he bound him, laid him on the altar, and took a knife to slaughter his son. But the angel of the Lord called to him from heaven and said, "Abraham, Abraham." And he said, "Here I am." Now, isn't that the moment that you are really glad you know the voice of the Lord? Aren't you glad that Abraham had such a friendship with God that he knew his voice in that moment? To me, that moment was far more valuable than even the first moment. But he knew, "Here I am." He said, "Wait, do not lay your hand on the boy or do anything to him, for now I know that you fear God, seeing you have not withheld your own son, your only son, from me." And Abraham lifted up his eyes and looked, and behold, him was a ram caught up in the thicket by his horn. So Abraham called the name of the place, "The Lord will provide." I have to ask myself a few things. Number one, how could Abraham have done such an extraordinary act? And I believe the reason that he could is because he had such an extraordinary faith. He looked at Isaac and he said, "God will provide the lamb." And the reason that he knew God would provide the lamb is because God will provide the sacrifice, is because God had told him, "Your descendants are coming through this boy." And so Abraham must have known that either God would stay his hand or he'd resurrect this boy, because God had said the promise was coming through him. And Abraham believed the Lord. He believed the promises of God. And so his faith gave him the courage for his obedience. Isn't that powerful? So our faith does the same thing. The deeper our faith, the deeper our confidence in these promises, in the word of the Lord, in the promises spoken to our heart, the greater our obedience. You don't trust something you don't have faith in. And so, what a beautiful statement of his faith. And it makes me pray, even though it's a scary prayer to pray, God, I want my faith to be so great that I will obey whatever you ask. Because I know your promise is so sure that you will provide. And then what I think is so beautiful about this too is that the friendship created the ability to hear the voice of God. So God created me a friendship with you so deep that I would recognize your voice anywhere. That I would recognize those detailed moments in which you love me anywhere. Because I am so familiar with your voice. And then can I leave you with this? I think this is so beautiful. While all of this is going on one side of the mountain, God is bringing up the ram on the other side of the mountain. They can't see the ram with their natural eyes, but Abraham sees the ram with his spiritual eyes because he's already told Isaac, the Lord will provide the sacrifice. But the ram is coming up the other side of the mountain. The whole time this testing of his faith is going on. And he says, this is a mountain that says God will provide. Friends, I don't know your place of faith that you're standing in right now. I know mine. I know that there are things on this side that I'm simply trying to walk out in obedience, but I cannot see what is coming up the other side. I can only see it through my eyes of faith. But what I do know is that the promises God has given me, for my family, for ministry, for health, for desires and dreams, all of those things, the ram's coming up the other side. I may not see him here, but I see him here. Oh God, increase my faith to know that you are the God who provides. You are Jehovah Jireh. And you provide every single time. In spite of what I see with my earthly eyes, if you have promised it, you will provide it. God, grow our faith. Grow our love relationship with you to create ears that hear you in all the chaos and noise of this life. And God, what I cannot see with these eyes, I pray you would allow me to see with these, so that my faith may then become my sight.